Hey, I'm Abby and welcome back to the Life Work Balance YouTube channel. Today I want to talk to you about how to troubleshoot your job search. So whether you've submitted hundreds of applications and you haven't heard back from any of them, or you've gotten through to a recruiter and you've gone through the screening process but you just can't seem to move forward, or maybe you even get through to the next stage of the interview process and you interview with a hiring manager or someone from HR and you still don't get moved forward in that hiring or the rest of the interview process. Something's going wrong, and what could it be? So let's talk through those three different possibilities of how to troubleshoot your job search. But before we do that, please go ahead and give this video a thumbs up if you're looking forward to learning about how to troubleshoot your job search. And if you haven't already, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button as well as the bell so that you can receive life work balance advice delivered directly to you every Sunday. So you've submitted tens, maybe hundreds of applications, and something just isn't working. You're not hearing back, you're not being moved forward, you're not getting that new job. So where are you going wrong? The first thing is to determine where you might be going wrong. So let's say that you've submitted a bunch of applications and you don't hear back from anyone about anything. It's just complete radio silence once you hit submit. You are not getting any callbacks or interview requests. And if you are, you're getting very few. This could indicate one of two things. Either you are not qualified for the positions that you're applying to, or you are qualified, but your resume isn't accurately demonstrating those qualifications. So first and foremost, you need to determine if you're actually qualified for the positions that you're applying to. Most job postings have two different sections of qualifications: minimum qualifications and preferred qualifications. In order to apply for a job, you absolutely must meet all minimum qualifications. These are the minimum qualifications required to be hired into the position. They're likely associated with a job description through human resources, and those things must be met in order to be hired into a position. Now, an entry-level job may not have any minimum qualifications. For example, you don't need any education or experience to be hired into that position. Other positions might require a bachelor's degree and 3 years of experience. So those minimum qualifications are important to pay attention to. There may also be equivalencies associated with the minimum qualifications. So for example, maybe it requires a bachelor's degree and 1 year of experience. However, there might be an equivalency in place where you have 3 or 4 years of experience that could take the place of that bachelor's degree. Or maybe you have a master's degree and 1 year of experience. That master's degree may take the place of the experience required for the position. So keep that in mind. There may be some equivalencies at play when it comes to meeting those minimum qualifications. However, before you apply to a job and you spend any time and energy applying, make sure you meet all minimum qualifications. The next step is to make sure that you meet at least 60% of those preferred qualifications. Preferred qualifications are not required for the position, but they are what will help rank candidates from highly qualified to just minimally qualified. If you are minimally qualified, chances of you getting an interview are slim. So you want to appear as highly qualified as possible. So reading through those preferred qualifications, you'll want to make sure that you meet at least 60% of those. That way you can be considered highly or moderately qualified for a position, which will increase your chances of getting a callback or an interview request. So if you are qualified for the position, if you meet those minimum qualifications and at least 60% of those preferred qualifications, chances are the problem is with your resume. Your resume could be formatted improperly for the applicant tracking system or the ATS. Your resume could be too generic, or it might not be personalized or customized to the position that you're applying to. When it comes to formatting your resume for the applicant tracking system, it's important to understand that a computer will likely review your application before any human does. If your resume is being uploaded into a system, the computer may review your resume and convert it into plain text so that it can determine if you have minimum and preferred qualifications. It will then likely generate a score that will be sent to a human to determine if they're going to review your application or not. If your resume has 2 or more columns, it likely won't be able to generate properly. You want your resume to be a single column so that the applicant tracking system can accurately convert your document into that plain text for its analysis. If you have more than one column, it will likely combine those columns in a single line. So you can see how this will easily get the computer system confused and how it might mix up your information. Applicant tracking systems tend to read your document like a book. They go left to right, top to bottom. So make sure your resume reads left to right, top to bottom, and there's only a single column so that the applicant tracking system doesn't mix up or confuse your data. Your resume could also be too generic, which means that you don't have any accomplishments, you don't have any quantifiable data listed on your resume, and it's just too plain and boring. There's nothing that makes you stand out. You do not want a generic resume. You want to make sure that you're calling out your specific achievements and you're quantifying any data that you have with metrics to make it more interesting to read. And along these same lines, you absolutely need to tailor your resume to the job that you're applying to. This doesn't mean that you need to recreate your resume with every single job that you're applying to. It just means that you need to pull keywords and phrases from the job posting and plug that into your resume. This also doesn't mean that you just blatantly copy and paste bullet points from the job posting into your resume. That's a big red flag, and it shows that you're kind of lazy. So you want to make sure that you highlight specific words and phrases that you insert from the job posting into your resume, not necessarily just full-blown copying and pasting. This personalization and customization for the specific job will trigger the applicant tracking system to recognize those words that are present in your resume and on the job posting, and it will likely give you a higher score as a more highly qualified applicant. So if you're not getting any callbacks or you're getting very few callbacks for all of the applications you're submitting, it's likely that you're either underqualified or your resume is not demonstrating that you are qualified. I actually offer application material review sessions. So if you feel like this might be something that you're struggling with, you can schedule a session with me and we can go over a job posting and your application materials to make sure that they're aligned to fully demonstrate your qualifications for the position. If you're interested in something like this, I've got my contact information and a link to take you to my website where you can schedule a session with me in the description box below. So again, if you're having trouble with this first step where you're not getting any callbacks and you'd like me to help you review your application materials, please contact me as soon as possible. All right, so let's say that you are making it past that initial callback process. You're getting interested recruiters or hiring managers who are wanting to screen you for the next steps of the interview process, but then it ends there. What could be going wrong at this stage? It's likely that there is a problem with how you're presenting yourself for this particular role. It could be what you are telling them or what you're not telling them. So your answer to the very first question, tell me about yourself, could be unsatisfactory during this initial screening process. You might be getting too personal, or you might not be getting in the details enough about how your experience relates to this actual new job. I've got several videos about how to introduce yourself during an interview. You will want to watch these to create a tailored response to that question, tell me about yourself, and you'll want to practice it and have it memorized. It will essentially tell the person who's asking you this question who you are, why you want this job, and how you're a good fit for this position. You'll want to make sure that you slightly tweak it for every screening process and interview that you go through so that you're aligning your answer to this question with this specific role and company. So again, I have several videos on this topic. If you haven't watched them yet, put that on your list of things to do next. I've linked to them in the description box below. Another problem that could be occurring is that what you're saying during the screening process doesn't actually match or align with the information that was on your resume. You want to make sure that you have everything that was on your resume memorized. That way, when you're asked specific questions, what you say aligns with what you've written on that document. This includes things like your job titles, the dates that you've worked for that organization, and those responsibilities that you had for each position. Now, if you're tailoring your resume, you may need to have your resume present in front of you so that you can easily refer to it during this screening process. Another problem that could be occurring during this initial screening process is that you're asking for too much money if you revealed your salary expectations. Do not reveal your salary expectations at this stage. it's likely that you don't know enough about this position to make that decision anyway. So if the recruiter or whoever is talking to you during the screening process asks you about your salary expectations, you can say something like this: I'd like to learn more about this position before I can provide a realistic salary expectation. If you are asked about your salary expectations at this stage, it's perfectly acceptable to say that you'd like to learn more about this position and this role before you can provide a realistic salary expectation. You can also ask them if they have a budget for this position, a hiring budget for this position. They might have the entire salary range posted on the position, but it's unlikely that that entire range is the actual hiring budget. So while they might be able to ask you what your salary expectations are, you can somewhat deflect by saying that you would like to learn more about the position before you can provide that realistic range. And then you can also ask them if there is a hiring budget for this position. They may or may not know the answer to that question, but it's good to then put it back in their court so that they can provide you with a range before you provide a range. I, again, have several videos on how to answer this type of question during the interview process, so you can prepare yourself by watching those videos and by using ONET as a resource for research. ONET is a website through the Bureau of Labor Statistics for the United States. It's onetonline.org, and it's a great resource to at least get a baseline expectation of what the salary could be for this particular job or occupation type is for the United States as a whole, for your state specifically, and it will give you an idea of what you can expect to ask for this role. The final reason why you might not be getting through this screening process with a recruiter is because you just haven't adequately prepared yourself for the screening. This could be that you haven't done enough research about the role or the position or the organization, or maybe you don't even seem that enthusiastic about the role. There are likely a lot of other applicants for this position. So you want to make sure that you are demonstrating how you are A, more qualified than them, and B, excited to work for this organization. If you don't make a great first impression, if you don't indicate that you're actually excited about this opportunity, or you indicate that you are unprepared for this screening process, they can easily move on from you. There are likely other people who will do a better job at demonstrating how they're going to be a good fit for this position. They do a better job at making that first impression and really indicating that they're enthusiastic for the position. So if you aren't enthusiastic, if you aren't prepared, if you haven't done your research, they're going to move on. So you want to make sure you research the role. This is likely just re-reviewing the job posting that you've applied to. You also want to research the company. Go to their website, visit their social media pages, see what sorts of things they're doing and what they're excited about and what they're working on. Develop a good understanding of what this organization actually does and what your role will likely do. You also want to be on time for this screening process, and really for any interview. Early is actually better, but if you're late, that demonstrates that you're not really that enthusiastic about the role. You want to try to sound or appear excited and enthusiastic, which means that you're going to be on time. You're going to have high energy. You're going to be making eye contact with them if this is a video or virtual interview. You're going to be smiling. So at minimum, be neutral. Ideally, you're enthusiastic and excited for this opportunity. If you appear unenthusiastic, bored, etc., that's going to turn this person off and they will quickly mark you off their list and go to the next person in line. So those are the reasons why you might not be making it through the second stage of this hiring process, which is the screening with the recruiter or the hiring manager. Now let's say you make it past the screening and it's time for you to go to an actual formal interview with the hiring manager or a panel of interviewers. You complete your interview and then you don't hear anything back. What could have gone wrong in this stage? What could likely be going wrong at this stage is that you're just not performing well during the actual interview and you're not accurately communicating your skills and your experience. So there are 3 things that you can do to help troubleshoot yourself at this process. The very first one is to understand how you're answering behavior-based or situation-based interview questions. These are the most common types of questions asked during interviews. I've got several videos on how to answer these types of questions, And I share with you several formulas that you can use to create a successful response to these types of questions. The STAR or the CAR response. Now, CAR is my preference just because it's easier for me to fully understand. Context, action, result. But STAR is very, very well known, and it's essentially the same thing as CAR. So you want to use the STAR or the CAR method to create responses to these behavior-based questions. Now, I've actually got a list of 52 behavior-based questions available for download for free from my website. I've linked to it in the description box below if you'd like to download it and use that as a way to practice and develop responses to these types of questions. And that's really the next step, is you need to practice your responses to these questions. You can't just expect yourself to wing it with the different types of questions that they ask you. Now, you may not know exactly the type of question that they're going to ask you, but you can generally come up with a response to a similar question that they might ask you, so that when they do ask you a behavioral or situation-based question, you're not completely blindsided or thrown for a loop. You have at least some idea of a situation that you could bring up to describe using the STAR or the CAR method to answer these behavior or situation-based questions. If you have trouble coming up with your answers or responses to these types of questions, schedule an interview strategy session with me. We can work one-on-one to go over specific types of questions that you can expect during an interview, and we can talk about your specific experience and how it relates to those types of questions. And I can help you develop your responses to those types of questions so that you feel most prepared for the actual interview. Something else that could be going on during the actual interview process is that you can't remember or you fail to communicate your actual accomplishments in past roles. This could also include failing to communicate those important details about past projects. So when you fail to communicate this type of information, the interviewers are wondering how the skills and the experience that you're bringing to the table are relevant to the position that you're applying to. What sort of value are you going to be able to provide to this role? If they can't answer that question, they're not going to move you forward in the interview process. So, what do you do to prepare for this? Have a master list of your projects that you've worked on, of your accomplishments that you've achieved, and memorize that list. You can then, again, follow the STAR or the CAR method when describing these projects and these accomplishments, and you can tie it to the position that you're applying to. You are welcome to bring notes to any interview. So you can have this master list printed out and available for you to refer to during the actual interview process. However, you do not want to read verbatim from this list. You just want it to be a visual reminder so that you can talk about your accomplishments and the projects that you've worked on and how it relates to the success that you've had, that you will bring to this new role during the interview. Again, do not read verbatim off of your notes. Use it just as a visual reminder to trigger that memory so that you can adequately speak on the task, on the situation, on the actions that you've taken, on the results that you've achieved, and how that relates to the position that you're applying to. And finally, the third thing that could be going wrong at this interview stage is that you're lacking the skills or the experience for this position. If you are lacking skills and experience for this position, you need to provide a clear and convincing rationale as to why you are still the best fit for the position. If you don't have this clear rationale, then you probably shouldn't apply in the first place. So if you are lacking some of those key skills and qualifications for the position, you need to have your justification ready for why you still are the most highly qualified candidate for this role. People who are hiring for positions want to bring someone on who can quickly hit the ground running and won't require a lot of training. So you'll want to, again, provide clear and concise rationale as to why you will still be the best fit for this position, even if you are lacking key skills or experiences. So hopefully you found this video helpful and you've now identified where you need to troubleshoot your job search. Whether it's at that very first stage where you're submitting applications and you're getting no callbacks or very few, whether it's at that screening process with a recruiter or hiring manager, or during the actual interview stage. Now, like I mentioned, If you're having trouble at any of these stages, I offer career coaching around all of these. So if you're having trouble at that very first stage where you're not getting any callbacks, you're getting very few callbacks, I can help you with your application materials review. If it's actually with the screening process or the interview process, we can do an interview strategy session or even a mock interview to figure out where things might be going wrong. If you're interested in working with me directly for that very specialized, personalized coaching, please reach out to me directly via email, or you can schedule a session directly on my website. I've linked to that information in the description box below. If you did find this video helpful, please go ahead and give it a thumbs up if you haven't already. And if you have any questions, comments, thoughts, or ideas, your experience and the things that you have to say about this is extremely valuable, not only to me because I appreciate it, but also to other people because they're learning from your experiences. So please share those questions, comments, thoughts, or ideas in the comments box below. If you haven't already, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button as well as the bell so that you can continue to receive life-work balance advice delivered directly to you every Sunday. Thanks, and I'll see you next week.